Hey there, YouTube. How's it going? Nerdy Narwhal here, and I'm back again today to take another look at a 6-scale action figure. Today, we're going to be taking a look at one of my absolute favorites in the collection, and that is the Asmus Toys Gimli 6-scale action figure. Gimli's one of my favorite characters from the Lord of the Rings movies. I like how he was portrayed in that. And Asmus did a really bang-up job creating this figure. I would say that now their Gandalf the White is probably objectively Asmus's best release to date. But for a very long time, I think that Gimli held that crown, if for no other reason than how Gimli forced the toy company to innovate and really strive for new heights with just what they were creating. Anyways, without any further ado, let's dive into this awesome action figure and see if it's worth your picking up for the very elevated prices that you'll find it at now in 2024. All right, you guys know by now how I like to do this. I like to hop in and get a little feel for the aesthetic right off the bat. And I'm pleased to say that there can be absolutely no doubt that this is Gimli on your 6-scale action figure shelves. They've captured the likeness really well, and they did have some, you can see him right on the box there. Right? There's not a whole lot of face for them to capture as much as there is beard and helmet and eyes. And Asmus did a pretty good job of doing that. The hard part, and where Asmus really had to innovate, was going to be with that rooted beard, particularly with all these braids. You can see it's really intricate how the small braids of the mustache go into the big braids of the beard, and those small braids get braided behind those big braids. So how are they going to do this in mass production? They said the technology wasn't quite there yet, but they were waiting. I followed them for a long time throughout this process, and finally they did it. And at the time, it was really, really innovative. And I think the struggles that they probably had with mass producing a figure with this level of intricacy is probably the reason we haven't gotten re-releases of this guy, even though there's a lot of people that want one. And the aftermarket prices are insane. Going through here, looking at the paint apps on display, it's all wonderfully done. His helmet looks worn, well painted, gold inlets and darker colors. Overall, it's a great looking figure. His axe has a metal head all bound in there with plastic, all 5 of the axes that he comes with. And there's just that dwarven patterning all throughout his costume and accessories, even places you won't see underneath that big bushy beard down there on his armor, his shoulder pads, which are going to spend a lot of time covered up by that cloak, down there on his boots. Right, if we get a look at his boots, everything looks really nice. And whereas Gimli's obscured in shadows a lot of the time, or the camera doesn't linger on his outfit quite as much, it's really fun to have an intricately detailed version of the character. It adds a whole lot to my appreciation of the costume work put in for the character for the Lord of the Rings movies. All right, let's go in there and get a look at the accessories that come with the figure that I do not actually have on the figure. And I'm excited to say that there is not much. You guys know that I really love it when a figure comes loaded with accessories, and all of the accessories have a place on the outfit of the figure, especially when the figure has an outfit that's already as intricate as Gimli. That's why I love the 6-scale fantasy and medieval stuff, is because their outfits are all so unique and detailed. And this guy he comes with 5 axes, and you can put them all on his body, which I think is just, it's great. It's cool. It adds a little something for the eye. And anyways, we'll get to that. Here's what he comes with, not on the outfit first. First of all, he's going to come with a left-fisted hand. See if we can get that to refocus for us. There we go. Left-fisted hand. Cool little gauntlets, cool little pattern on there. And a right-fisted hand. There we go. Actually, this is the left. That was the right. He's going to come with his left gripping hand. And his right open, relaxed hand. You can see they really got the detail of those gloves really good. That looks like a brawnier dwarven hand in a pair of gloves. It's exactly what they had to do. Now with what's on the figure, I usually opt to have, oh no, there we go, one closed grip hand and one open relaxed hand, because this hand, as you can see in this pose right here, sort of opts in a pinch for any sort of pose that you're doing, can work as another gripping hand, especially this one, as it's got just enough curvature to the pinky down there to sort of loop around and grip on an accessory if that's what you want to do. Anyways, let's start taking Gimli apart and looking at the accessories that he comes with. First of all, in the back here, and it's going to be slung nicely into this little ring that you get that pops through the back of that cape, you're going to get his awesome double-headed axe. This is a great piece to have Gimli displayed with. It looks wonderful. It has, again, all of that dwarven patterning running throughout it. And I think this is probably what's most iconic for Gimli to use throughout the movies. Every single big battle scene, I think Gimli's using this one and looking really cool while swinging it. Gimli's war axe. Next, over here, you're going to get another axe, and this slings through a little pocket on his shoulder belt, as well as a little ring right there to hold it all nicely in place. There we go. It's a little bit shorter than the axe I currently have him with, so maybe it's a backup axe for him. This is more or less a bearded axe. Little Danish or Viking looking kind of axe. But again, looks awesome right there. And you can see, maybe you can see, let's see. You can get that, there we go. It has some more detailing on the top of the head too. Real cool little accessory. Plop that down. Finally, we get to his walking axe, and this is the one that I usually have in his hand because there's actually no place to put this on the figure. But when everything else is loaded out and Gimli looks like he's ready to go for an adventure, plop that axe in his hand, and it's sort of a very deadly walking stick for him. So I love having that there. You can see there that it looks like it had some pieces cut out to make it a little bit lighter. Of course, with that fine dwarven craftsmanship, I'm sure it doesn't make it any less deadly. It's also got a poker up there so he can jab with it if he had to. Very good looking. And again, all the axe heads, these are die cast, glued into a plastic piece. Finally, let's get to these two down here. These ones are usually a little bit tougher to take out. They're in there real tight, so I'm going to do my best to at least get them out enough on camera. You have this throwing axe right here, and that one looks great. They're, again, tough to wedge in there. I'm not sure if you can see. Let's angle it up because the bottoms are super tight. And this little gold piece right here popped off on this one. which made it real easy to slide in, but then I had to glue that little gold piece back on. So do bear that in mind. Moving on to the back here, you have this axe, and it's just another throwing axe, a little bit longer than this one, but still pretty neat. And those are his smaller axes, one-handed axes that he could dual wield, or he could throw at an enemy to give him a little bit of range. Great accessories, but again, they're gonna stay there on the belt for the most part. The good news is when they're on the figure, they really don't hinder his articulation at all. Now that's going to do it for all of Gimli's weaponry. The outfit accessories that you are going to receive are going to be this helmet, which, again, that's going to stay on his head pretty much all the time. I don't really think you do see Gimli, I guess, in a couple of the bar scenes. You see him without that helmet on, but for the most part, Gimli's always wearing that helmet. So that's not coming off the figure. And you put that on, you can see the leather strap right there. See if I can lift up that big beard of his. There you go. You just sort of tie it through and buckle it right down there underneath his beard, and it stays on really good. You can see I've been articulating the head, and the helmet has not gotten off center too much throughout the filming of this. Let's go back there. You can see his long dwarven braid held on by those hair rings, and you're going to get this elven cloak. The elven cloak does have that brooch of Rivendell at the front of it, but it doesn't really, I mean, you're never going to see it underneath that beard, but you just pop the whole head off, slip that on, tie the helmet, pop the head back on, and now Gimli's outfit is set in stone. Again, this cloak does have a nice user-friendly little slit in the back so that you can slide through Gimli's big two-headed battle axe. And that's going to do it for accessories that this guy comes with. All right, now let's get into articulation. Gimli comes with a very big outfit on, right? Many layers. But I think Asmus did a very good job of retaining the articulation as much as they could. First of all, the arms are going to go out plenty far for a big Gimli T-pose. See, he's doing that without any problem. One thing that I thought was kind of meh about what they did here. Now, first of all, this is a totally unique body for this character. It feels like it was based on a caustic plastic body, which is what Asmus was using at the time, but the proportions are all new. Now, they have a ratchet joint for the shoulder going forward, and that's really just kind of okay for me, right? I'm not necessarily a big fan of that ratcheting because it's going to limit your articulation for here or there, but you're not going to be able to really get anything in between. Again, not a super huge deal. Gimli's not the most agile of characters. He just needs to be able to put two hands on his axe and swing it, for me at least. But you should be aware of that. So, then we're going to give that elbow a nice little double jointed bend there, which is going to get you to that 45 or so. Not too shabby. Let's bring it back down. The articulation is not going to inhibit that bicep swivel at all. It's also going to rotate with that butterfly joint that they have in there, so the arms can get around. Now for his chainmail here, Asmus used, let's get a quick little zoom in on it, going down. There we go. Asmus used a, yeah, it's like a textured rubbery material. They weren't going to be able to give us Gimli's actual mail and as fine of detail with real materials, because it is a very fine mail. But that rubbery material, it doesn't push back on the joints at all. It settles into a pose, very cloth-like, looks pretty good, and is just kind of there as another layer to the outfit. I think it works pretty good. This is one of the better materials that Asmus has probably used to replicate fine chainmail. Now I'm going to zoom back out. There we go. And we'll get a quick little look at Gimli on the box there. There we go. So that is what they were trying to replicate with what they ended up using. It works well enough. It's better than what they used for their Boromir 1 and 2, because I think they used 2 different things for each of his underlying chainmail. The Gimli one, it works fine. And let me adjust the camera real quick. It continues all the way down throughout the figure, down here. So it just kind of looks good while staying out of the way enough to keep the figure functional. Anyways, back to articulation. The head's gonna look down yay far so we can talk to the hobbits. The head is going to look up plenty far so we can talk to Gandalf. At the torso, you're going to get a tad bit of diaphragm motion, but you're really not going to get much. This is the part where the outfit is the thickest, so it's not going to get out of your way for anything in there. He's got this leathery, thick suit. He's got several belts wrapped up all around him. You're toast if you're trying to get him to bend at the torso. Now you will get plenty of bend at the hips, so he can look down from those hips just fine if you need him hunched over. All right, now in getting to the hips, let's see how they did there. The hips have a similar thing to the shoulders where they're going to click and sort of ratchet into place. Gimli can get his stumpy little leg up to about right there, just under right about 90 degrees to the body. The knees retain their single jointed knee cut, which works fine. That goes all the way to 90. These pants don't inhibit articulation at all. And it's a 2-piece boot cut with a 3rd piece underneath to not break up the sculpt too much. And that's going to allow you plenty of ankle pivot up and down, front and back, side to side. Gimli can get into some pretty dynamic poses. And if you're doing anything too crazy, he's supported well enough by the stand that he comes on. All right, now let's get a quick little comparison of Gimli next to some other characters, because Gimli is on display a character of very unique stature. He's about 7-8 inches tall, somewhere right in there. 10, I don't know, I didn't actually measure, but he's going to stand out on your shelves because of it, especially if your shelves are currently dominated by figures of otherwise average height. And for a 6 scale figure, that's going to be right at about 12 inches. So I've got a couple of other figures here. You can see Gimli is definitely shorter than your average 6 scale figure. There's the Dread Pirate Roberts there. And he's also bulky and brawny. Asmus nailed the proportions that they used for this character. But we do have a couple of other shorter guys, of course. Here's the obligatory look next to Frodo. And even on his stand, Frodo not on his, there. You can see Gimli's going to stand about a head taller than Frodo and just be significantly bulkier than him. Now, I no longer have the Sideshow Hobbits. I did have the Sideshow Frodo and Sam for a while, and by comparison, they were about the same size and more or less stature with all of their outfit on to Gimli, so it didn't really look right on the shelf. I definitely had to upgrade and get the Asmus Frodo because of stature almost alone. And finally, we have Tyrion Lannister. There we go. Another dwarf, but perhaps not of the same kind. You can see Tyrion being a human dwarf, a little person. He's going to have different proportions. His head's going to be bigger. His body's going to be stumpier with shorter limbs. Whereas Gimli is basically a very stocky, sized down regular human. So it's fun to have all of that size variance on the shelves, I think, right? You've got your standard human size. Maybe you have a couple of larger characters like the Hound, and you've got your very small human proportions, and you have your dwarf proportions, your little person, more realistic in how they would look instead of being a fantasy dwarf. And it all looks really fun on display. It definitely switches things up, and that's a fun part about having Gimli on your displays. Oh, and one thing I might not have mentioned is on the back of the belts, all of the little treasures of Gimli keep on giving. He has 2 little travel packs as well as a blanket because he's all ready for his high fantasy adventure through the lands of Middle-earth. Just awesome. Very well detailed. And all right, you guys, that's going to more or less wrap up this review of Asmus's exceptional 6-scale Gimli. Now, there are some issues with articulation, right? Those shoulders are real tight. It can be a bit of a pain in the butt. But over time, they've loosened up well, actually. And Gimli's holding poses better now than he did when I first got the figure. Some of the tight joints have loosened up a bit. It could also be just because it's kind of chilly here where I live also, and that might have caused some shrinkage just enough. I'm not sure, but Gimli poses just fine. His outfit is intricate, and he's a super unique character. Only 2 action figures have used this kind of body, so you're only going to get this look twice, and that's if you also picked up the Asmus Thorin. Now, the Asmus Thorin is definitely not the same type of character that Gimli is. Thorin uses swords. Gimli's your big, brawny fantasy dwarf with a bunch of axes. He's your berserker sort of character template, and he works really well in the shelves. He's also fully armored. Thorin doesn't wear a helmet. Thorin doesn't have a big, intricate beard, whereas Gimli does. So he's really a character that you're just, I mean, if you don't have it, you don't have it. But if you're hunting for one, I can definitely say that you should probably pick this guy up. He's awesome. And he's such an essential part of the Fellowship. And when you go back and rewatch The Lord of the Rings, he's most of the comedic relief in those movies. His drinking scene, his one-liners. Gimli's great. And Peter Jackson did a really phenomenal job of characterizing Gimli for the movies outside of just what he was in the books. Now, let's talk about the price. Do I think you should go out and spend $450 on this figure like some folks on eBay are asking? Absolutely not. You should remain patient, right? I believe at retail this guy was $200 some odd, right around in there, pretty much industry standard at the time. And you really got a lot for your money with that purchase. I was completely happy with it and how much I spent at retail. Now, you will see deals pop up every now and again, especially if you're patient and you don't mind playing the waiting game, but you could probably find this guy somewhere in that 300 range, right? 300, 350, somewhere in there with the right amount of patience, with the right keen eye posted onto the Facebook sellers group or eBay or Mercari. He does pop up from time to time. And can I suggest it for around there? Yes, absolutely. I'd spend $300 to $350 on this guy in a heartbeat, especially if I didn't have him in the collection, especially if I had also already had an Asmus or any Aragorn or a Legolas. And Legolas is one you can get real cheap recently. So that's definitely worth a pickup too. But you have you have Aragorn, you have Legolas, you have Gandalf. I mean, you've got your Warriors 3. Maybe you have a complete fellowship. You have all the Boromir. Gimli's pretty essential to that whole display. And if you don't have any and you just really want a dwarf on your shelves, again, Gimli's a great way to go with all those axes. He is awesome. Anyways, per usual, you guys, if I missed anything in this review or there's anything you want me to look at, feel free to leave a comment. I'll make a short or I'll just respond to your comment and let you know, answer it to the best of my abilities, right? It's a great figure. If you have it, you know. If you don't have it and you're looking for one, I hope you find out. So that's going to wrap this up. Stay happy, stay healthy, and keep on collecting. Bye-bye.